You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Today's Body Charge podcast is about sleep apnea and the not-so-silent silent killer. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare recently published a report which shows that nearly half of Australian adults commonly report at least 2 sleep-related problems. Getting too much or too little sleep is associated with an increased risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and stroke. The trend is on the rise, and there are nearly twice as many men than women who suffer from sleep disorders. Sleep-related breathing disorders restrict oxygen in the body and can become quite serious. In Australia, Medicare subsidises sleep studies and treatments, so you can inquire with your GP for a referral. My special guest today is Dr. Bijoy John, a US board-certified sleep specialist in pulmonary, sleep and critical care medicine. He is also known as Dr. Sleep Fix, with over 25 years of experience in the field of sleep medicine. He has just published his book called Nobody Sleeping and has a successful program of the 7 proven sleep strategies in Sleep Now course. So welcome aboard, Dr. Bijoy John. I'm so happy to have you here because this is a big problem. And I must add, just before we start, that my husband does suffer from sleep apnea, and if I get to sleep first, it's not such a problem for me. But if I don't, oh boy, I've sometimes had to get my blanket and pillow and just go out and sleep on the lounge. And you know, he says, oh, I have no trouble sleeping. And that's true. But once he is asleep, he's really noisy.
Correct.
So why is this problem actually increasing globally? And what's it all about? What's happening to the body when people are not getting the right kind of breath going in? Because he sounds like that. His lips, his mouth breathes, and sometimes he doesn't breathe for a long time, and you think, oh my gosh, and then suddenly there's a big intake of breath, and you know, it's a bit worrying sometimes. What do you have to say about these problems?
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me on your show. So you've described everything that is so typical of this disorder. So this is called sleep apnea, but there's a word before it. It's called obstructive sleep apnea. There's literally an obstruction that's happening in the back of the throat. So air is not flowing through the back of the throat well. Imagine a pipe with water, and now you narrow the pipe, there's turbulence. Snoring is nothing but the turbulence of air going through a narrow passage. So finally, the passage gets so narrow, then there's no breath going in. And then the body senses that when there's no breath, there's buildup of carbon dioxide, and the body senses and says, hey, wake up. And then you get that breath, and you wake up and take a breath, and the airway is open. And then you repeat this multiple times during the course of the night. So that is the classic sign of sleep apnea. It's usually worse on the back. It's usually more common as the night progresses because we go more into REM sleep. REM sleep is more worse for obstructive sleep apnea. And you also mentioned you sleep separately. That's called sleep divorce. Couples are sleeping separately because of the noise, and men are more prone to it. I will tell you in a second why. So my aim in my practice is to bring couples together. So that's my philosophy of bringing couples together by sleeping together, by curing the sleep apnea. So the question becomes, why is men more prone for sleep apnea and of course snoring? So what happens is in men's, the larynx or the voice box is a little bit bigger, and the airway is also bigger. So now you're blowing the air into a bigger passage or a bigger end tunnel, so it is amplified more. So women's airway passage are smaller, and so it does not make that amplification of the sound when it goes through the larynx or the voice box. That's the real reason. And also the soft palate and the heart, the thing that's on the back of your throat, that's also a little bit thicker in men, so it most tends to most vibrate, creating the sound. And of course, women don't report snoring much. So they say, hey, I'm not snoring. But what happens with women when they attain menopause or perimenopausal, the estrogen level drops, and you are at risk or the same risk of a
More,
man.
more testosterone.
Correct. And so that's what happens to women around perimenopausal age. You have more incidence of sleep
You
apnea. So
also have a few more chin hairs.
correct. Yeah, that's because of the hormonal changes, including the testosterone, like you said. Yes. So that's the reason why. So the word obstruction, air going through a narrow passage makes a sound, and ultimately there's no breath. The brain senses it. So your husband is not having good quality sleep, even though he's sleeping 8 hours or 6 hours. The quality is not that great.
No, and I did notice too that during
Yes.
the day, if he's
Yes.
sitting or reading,
Yes.
sometimes he'll just sit and doze off sitting up. And I'm thinking, how can he sleep sitting up? I can't do
Yes.
that.
Correct. So what happens is that is called hypersomnia or being tired because you didn't sleep the night before. So even though you're sleeping, it's like somebody literally waking you up. The brain, sends signal to wake you. You're woken up multiple times during the night, 10, 15 times an hour. So you don't go to any of you're not getting into deep sleep so he's basically sleep deprived and he's making it up during the day. So that's a clear sign of sleep deprivation.
Yes, so it's very important to get into that REM sleep, isn't it? That's the sleep cycle where the pineal gland makes the melatonin, which is a powerful antioxidant that helps clean up the waste products in the brain and the
Correct.
central nervous system. And
Yes.
that's why when we have a deep sleep, we wake up more refreshed the next day. We have more energy. The brain is working much better. And so we have problems when we don't go through those deep sleep cycles. So,
Yes.
so how if someone recognizes they've got this problem, they get some help from a practitioner, they may get a referral to a specialist. What would normally be the process to go through to fix that problem?
Correct. So everybody is afraid to go and get tested because you have to go to a strange place and get all wired up. But today there's home sleep testing. I'm sure this is available in Australia. I use something called a watch pat. So you wear it as a watch and then it's a finger probe and there's a chest lead. You sleep at your own home. So that solves a lot of problems. So that's the first step. People are like afraid to come to a sleep center. So you wait and then you wear that in the night and then bring it back the next day and then you can get the results straight away, and then you can have an answer. There are many other devices. There's Bell technology.
Probably buy them online, can you? Those devices that make the recordings.
No, you can probably. I think you have to go through a provider. It's
Uh-huh.
probably always better to, so somebody who's a specialist in the field of sleep medicine,
Yeah,
so they
to
have
make
access
sure
to
it's
it.
reliable. Yeah.
Correct. So of the many technologies, you have to use the one that is scientifically, holds the data pretty good.
So after the data comes in and the problem clearly shows itself, what would that practitioner do or recommend to have done for the correction?
Okay, so sleep apnea is divided into mild, medium, and severe. Depending upon the number of events of apnea or what we call the hypopnea or half an apnea per hour, right? So if you have 5 to 15 episodes per hour, that is called mild. If it's 15 to 30, it's called medium, and over 30, it's considered severe. So treatment varies with all these different stages. If you have severe sleep apnea, the treatment that is the gold standard. It's called CPAP machine. So it's a well-known machine. So it actually blows air. So what happens? The air goes through the nose and pushes the tongue out of the way. So the tongue is a major culprit. 80% of the obstruction is caused by the tongue. So it pushes the tongue away. All right. So and then there is a newer technology called Inspire treatment where it's like a pacemaker implanted and then the nerve to the tongue is stimulated and it's literally signals the tongue to push out of the way with every breath. So that's the newest technology. That's for severe sleep apnea. So when you have mild sleep apnea, the first thing I tell people is if you can lose weight, that will be a first step in this process because at least 10% of the weight can help with weight is evenly distributed, like
Less
it
bulk.
narrows. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bulk in the neck and the posterior part of your throat. So and then for mild sleep apnea, you can have what is called there is new excitement in this device called Excite OSA. It's a device daytime therapy. You just keep in your tongue. It strengthens the tongue. It's like a tense unit to the tongue so that the tongue does not fall back. So it strengthens the tongue. So this is the first
The
FDA.
muscles.
Yes,
We
the
don't
genial
really
glass.
think so much of the tongue as being a muscle, but it is, isn't it? and we
It
need to look
is.
after that muscle.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong muscle, the genioglossus. It's a big bulk of muscle. So it's like exercising your, muscles. When you work out, muscles are stiffer. It doesn't fall back at night. So that's one treatment. Then there are oral appliances will pull the jaw forward. So that can move when the jaw is pulled forward, it pulls the tongue forward. So hence the back of the throat's open. So those are the four treatments that is available for the treatment of sleep apnea.
Is it possible for someone with TMJ in, where the jaw is out of alignment to have these kind of symptoms? Is that an association?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the treatment is the oral appliance that is has to be fitted by a dentist. So people who have TMJ issues, the jaw is moved forward, so they might exacerbate that pain. So it has to be done by a specialist in that. So a TMJ problem per se does not cause sleep apnea. It's the tongue and the posterior pharynx or the posterior throat. TMJ problems, can be a little bit tricky when you decide treatment for such patients. It does not cause sleep apnea per se.
Right, right. So it's what's the time period for someone to have that problem corrected with these devices? Does it take like weeks or months or?
Great question. It all depends. The more severe the problem, people like it so much better. It's like almost like they get instant relief. So in the past, when everybody went to the lab to get their testing done, we used to have protocols where if it's greater than 30, we make them wear the CPAP, and then the next day morning we can't even wake them up because they're getting the much needed rest.
They're
So
catching up.
correct. So the more severe the problem, in my experience, they do better. But everybody, even if you have mild problem, it takes about a month if you have milder problems to get used to it. But if you're severe, you get instant release, like the relief the next day. So you can get on the next day.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know
Yes,
in the past, when the older devices, they were quite uncomfortable. And so they had a lot of people discontinuing the process. So in the more modern versions of those devices, are they more comfortable for people to wear? How is the
correct.
how is their adherence to and their compliance with continuing to the end until the problem's solved?
Okay, so there's three parts to this thing. There is a machine which blows air. There is a hose that comes in, and there's a mask. The big challenge is the mask. Everybody's face is different. So we have facial recognizing, contour recognizing software. You can just scan your face, and you get a reasonable close. Most of the masks are mild, or small, medium, and large. But now we have this custom fit, and the size of the mask is smaller. There's something called nasal pillows we can keep under the nose. And so the host technology has not much change. It's just a tube. And of course, there is some heating element of the tube that helps with the compliance. And then the machines are newer. They're smaller. And of course, most of the machine today have auto capacity. You don't blow a lot of air all the time. It adjusts as you sleep. If your apnea is more, it dials up. So there is a range pressure. So, and also has a humidifier. It is heated, and the tube is heated. The masks are better. So the technology has helped people to use their CPAP much better.
Does it make a noise?
There's absolutely no noise with the machine. Only noise is when it comes off the face, the air blasting through, whoosh, and then it recognizes that you can stop it, but that's the only time there's noise. This is a closed system. There's no sound.
What if in your sleep you turn over and unplug yourself?
Yes, that can happen. This tube is the hose is about 6 feet long, so you can roll around a lot. But sometimes it
Gets
comes out,
caught,
and yeah, it get caught, and it can come out. It makes a noise and it wakes most people up. Yes,
so they can just put it back
put it
in.
back on. Correct.
Yeah. So according to your experience, this has saved a lot of marriages.
Yes, yes. I mean, treatment. One thing we can do to, of course, sleep apnea affects all kinds of systems in our body: blood pressure, diabetes, cognitive function. And if you don't control blood pressure, you have heart problem, you have stroke. So there is a myriad of problems that are controlled. Of course, you're when breathing and like climbing stairs, your heart rate is going high, you're breathing fast. So when you have an apnea, there's no breath, so the heart has to work faster and harder. So that triggers an arrhythmia, that triggers blood pressure, and there's also the fight or flight response that is saving your example, your husband, and waking you up. During that, there's a jolt of norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is the cause of all this.
Yes, too much
So
stress,
correct.
a
So
lot
your
of
body's
stress.
supposed to heal in your sleep. We all are stressed during the day, but that's reset does not happen at nighttime.
You need to recover during rest, and if
Correct.
the stress hormones like
Yeah.
adrenaline, etc., are too high,
Yes.
you your pineal gland can't do its work to create the melatonin. There has to be
Yes.
complete rest to do
Yes.
that, and that's when your cells repair. Many things happen for recovery during that sleep cycle, and so if it's interrupted, we're not repairing, we're not recovering the body well enough,
Correct.
and that
Yes.
ages us prematurely. Oh my gosh, it's a way to get older faster, not getting enough sleep, right?
Yeah. You can see a person from far, the skin's wrinkly, they have baggy eyes, they have other health problems. They're tired, you can see them from, that's what I do day in and day out. Everybody comes in a cranky mood. Your cognition is better, it's worse. So, like the number one of the treatable causes of Alzheimer's dementia is treating the sleep apnea. Years of, what happens, there is no flow of oxygen. There's less oxygen
Yes,
to
they
this,
call that hypoxia, don't they?
yes,
Hypoxia.
correct. So the hypoxia leads to vasoconstriction, blood vessels narrow, inflammation, and there's no blood going. Eventually, there are sensitive areas, the memory area, processing areas of your brain are lost, and then you can have dementia. Same thing with the low libido. The same thing happens to our genital organs. There's less of oxygen. I see a lot of young men with low testosterone, low libido because of untreated sleep apnea. So sleep apnea affects all parts of the body from head to toe, your cognition, your heart, your sexual function, of course, not to mention weight gain, which is a complicated system. When the more weight you gain, the more sleep apnea, you're not very energetic, you gain more weight. It's a vicious cycle. So it affects head to toe. Very, very important treatable condition.
Yes. And I think also because when we don't recover well enough during the sleep cycle, the body builds up too much toxicity, too many waste products don't become eliminated or neutralized. And then you have more reactive oxygen species, don't you? That's a free radical that damages the body, that dissolves cells, that's the element that ages us quickly, is that we don't have enough antioxidant support, which we get during the deep sleep.
Exactly.
And so it's a downward spiral, isn't it? It's very difficult to recover unless you find a way to bypass the sleep problems. So because Elektra Magnesium provides transdermal magnesium, that's a really great way to get calm and relaxed and proceed the phase to get into a deep sleep, because you have to suppress the stress hormones of the day. And so magnesium has been found to have a direct effect to suppress the stress hormones. But at the end of the day, the other issues causing the sleep apnea, as you mentioned before, are mechanical things,
You got it.
the
Yes.
weight and
Yes.
the tongue and the things obstructing
Mhm.
the air passage. So they need to be addressed to support that person in getting a good sleep. And then it could become very regenerating, and you can have an anti-aging effect from it.
Yeah, I tell people you literally add 10 years to your life if you treat your sleep apnea. But weight is a major problem. Some people have their jaw pushed back, the overbite. So naturally they have the tongue is pushed back. And some people have craniofacial abnormalities, like some of the children with Down syndrome. they have facial, a big tongue, and there's changes in the nose. And of course, if you have deviated nasal septum, so all this passage can cause obstruction. And of
Yes.
course, if you have a thyroid problem, there's change in the muscle, and the tissues are changed when there's low thyroid. So the hypothyroidism is one of the causes of sleep apnea.
Because that suppresses metabolism. And if
Correct.
we don't have enough energy in the system, the central nervous system becomes depressed. And so we're not generating the enzymes or the hormones or whatever we need to make. Everything is like on computer safe mode. It's sort of working, but not optimally.
Correct.
So
Uh,
you mentioned the deviated septum. Well, my
yes.
husband had an injury many years ago in his
Mhm.
younger. He was an athlete, a gymnast, and had an accident and then had an operation, but it was never really corrected fully.
Correct.
So
Yes.
I think that sleep apnea, although it's become worse in his older years, I think, as you said, that's partly due to his perhaps gaining a few more kilos that he shouldn't put on.
Yes.
And that
And
yeah,
low
and what
testosterone in men, and low estrogen in men, everything becomes more saggier.
yeah,
So the tissue loses their tonicity. And so that's another important cause of obstructive sleep apnea.
yes, I'll have to put him on a big program. So the device to help him sleep and not have the obstruction and not have the hypoxia. He's got to go
Right.
to the gym and do some muscle training.
Yeah. So,
So
so it's when he has more energy when he sleeps better, he has more energy to work out. It's a vicious cycle. You have to somewhere break that cycle, right?
yes,
And not to talk about the mental health and anxiety and depression with sleep problems. When you don't sleep well, you're more anxious and more depressed, and more depressed and anxious, you tend to not sleep well. And of course, poor sleep alters the leptin and ghrelin. The leptin lowers your appetite, ghrelin increases your appetite. This is altered. There is less secretion of leptin and more secretion of ghrelin, so you tend to gain more weight. It's a vicious cycle. So like you said, the cleaning process, there's a system in the brain called the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is for the rest of the body. The brain has got a lymphatic system. So when you sleep well, it pulsates the CSF fluid pulse and gets
yep,
all the muck, all the
yep,
toxins out. If you don't sleep well, that system is not working. So that's another cause of the dementia and Alzheimer's dementia.
yeah. Another cause for hypoxia because the
Correct.
buildup of toxins create
Yes.
a lower pH
Yes.
in the blood and the fluids of the body, and the lower pH then breeds more bacteria, more pathogens. You're probably more likely to get infections, colds, influenza. The immune system is under a lot of pressure then,
Right.
becomes overworked. So yes, there's a big cascade, isn't it, just coming from that one issue of sleep apnea.
Correct. And then, all the tissues need oxygen. So when you have an apnea, that means stopping breathing. So when there's breath is stopped, there's no flow of oxygen. So the main cause of all this problem is low oxygen, and the body has to conserve oxygen by narrowing to divert the oxygen to important areas. So some areas get left out. So that's
and
what the
and
problem
that's
lies.
and that's why you can get high blood pressure as well, because you
Exact.
have that constriction of the cardiovascular system.
Correct. And the release of norepinephrine and epinephrine because as a reaction to the apnea.
Yes, yes, the stress hormones. Well, in a sense, the body panics, doesn't it? Low
Exactly.
oxygen sounds the alarm bells to the central nervous system and says, "Hey, do something." And so,
Yes.
to do something, which is an action, we need the cortisol and we need adrenaline, we need the stress hormones picking up so that it pushes us to do something to fix the problem. So it's an autonomic system that kicks in, isn't it?
That's right. So it's the flight or fight response that happens to it. It's needed in the real time, but it's happening, to escape from a danger, you need it,
Yeah,
but you don't need it when you're sleeping. That's what's
no.
happening all through the night.
And it's chronic. Yeah,
Yes.
that's when it's very bad for health,
Yes.
deteriorates as quickly.
Correct.
So before we finish this
Yes.
really, really interesting podcast,
Mhm.
what would you like to add in summary, and also let people know where they can find out more information or read more or become more aware of how to fix these problems?
Correct. So I have a website called www.sleepfixacademy where all the material will be available. I have a course that I'm forming. This is all happening. My book just took off without any publicity. It's become number one for a week or so without anything. So I'm scrambling to form the course. That's called the Sleep Now course. I'll give you a few glimpses of it. It's a quick summary. Everybody can, if they have a piece of paper, they can write it down. Is Sleep Now, SLEEPNOW. S is for schedule. You need to have a fixed schedule. L is low light, low noise, low temperature. Melatonin is secreted in low light and low temperature. And then the next E is electronics, major problem. I try to tell people to avoid electronics an hour prior
Yes.
to prior to sleep and keep their phone away from them so that you don't bothered
It's
by
too much
the dings.
stimulation. Yeah.
Correct. And then the next E is exercise at least 4 hours prior to going to sleep. And then P is power off your mind. So you have to do the phone and the exercise early, and so that you're getting to a process. So you're
And
powering up.
remember to put your magnesium on before bed as well.
Yes, I learned a lot about
Mm.
magnesium, and sometimes I do prescribe magnesium as a health supplement for sleeping. Great work that you've done and promoting. So, powering your mind, I tell a couple of tactics. It's a vivid imagination, use your own imagination, and then yoga nidra, Nidra. Nidra means it's Sanskrit for nothingness. You lose yourself. So that's the P, and then the NO I combined is no to worries. I tell people to worry between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., not when you lay in bed. Make sure you worry. So you're all preparing these steps. And the W in Sleep Now is win by losing. We want to win, 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 do everything, but sleep you can't. It's a seven step meal. You have to have the wine, you have to have the appetizer, you have to have the main course, you have to have a process to sleep. It's a seven-course meal. You
Yes.
can't just get it like that.
No,
It's like a
it's
it's
the
like a dimmer. It's not
routine.
correct. It's a dimmer, not an on-off switch. So Sleep Now, you can find all that information. My book has got so much information, so many chapters for helping our people. This is I discovered the joy of sleeping, and my mom taught me. So I just want to share it with the world, and I just want everybody to sleep better and feel
Yeah,
better.
yeah, that's absolutely so crucial and important. And I'd just like
Yes.
to add one more thing. So
Yes.
when I get into my deep sleep cycle
Hmm.
from a similar routine, it's a
Yeah.
gradual descent into that nothingness.
Yes.
I do sometimes have a thought if I want to make a decision, go this way or that way.
Hmm.
And in my waking day, I haven't really been able to decide. I
Yes.
leave it to my brain to work out during my deep sleep.
Yes.
And I program my brain that when I wake in the morning, I will automatically know exactly the right direction, the right thing to do, and I will be 100% sure. And then I let it go. I don't worry about it because I know I've delegated it to the other part of my brain that somehow
Yes.
still works while I'm sleeping.
Correct.
Do you find this? Have you tried
Yeah,
that?
so that's like a deeper level of sleep because when you're sleeping, the dreams, all the lot of things happen in your sleep, the healing, the creativity, the resolution, all that you're leaving to you're discovering the superpower of sleep. I call it sleep. You're letting it function. So that means you're sleeping well, and instead of worrying in your sleep, you're healing in your sleep. That is the fantastic power that you've discovered of sleep. I've done the Sleep Now course, the name of my book, Nobody's Sleeping, all came out of that. When you're thinking, I woke up one morning and said that's my name, that's the name of this course, and the seven proven all that came up by sleeping better.
Oh, that's really wonderful, and I'm so glad that you've come and explained everything so well.
Yes. Yes.
I know a lot of people will be very interested, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate you being on my podcast. And
Yes.
perhaps in the future we can do this again when there are more updates,
Yes.
new
Yes.
information coming on board, because
Yeah.
science is always discovering more,
Correct.
and we
Yes.
keep learning. Of It
Yes.
never finishes, does it? We just get a little bit more added to the pile of knowledge.
Correct. That's the exactly the truth. So it's all about sharing and learning from each other. And I learned during this podcast. I had listened to several of your podcasts, and I'm going to still continue to listen to it. Thank you. We are all have to learn to grow and share the knowledge so that we can all heal better and we can conquer the
And
the
think
world.
better. Think
Exactly.
better. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Sandy, it
Much
was my
appreciated.
pleasure. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.